Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Student Port Speaker Series. My name is Serena Ding, and I am one of the co-founders of Student Port. Student Port is a global virtual community of over 1,600 Generation Z students, featuring over 200 student-led organizations, startups, and initiatives. On Student Port, we have many students interested in founding their own startups or nonprofits, but they often aren't sure where to begin or how to secure funding. So today's event, we will focus on STEM research, innovation, and startups. On behalf of the Student Port team, welcome to today's panel discussion with Dr. Richa Chandra, Richa Bansal, and Rashmy Parimi. They are all very accomplished and have many things in common. They're all women supporting diversity, and they all have extensive experiences in both STEM and entrepreneurship. And I know right now this event might seem like it's geared more towards girls, but the insights that these wonderful speakers will share will also apply to boys as well. In today's world, we really value and appreciate diversity, and girls and boys really need to work together so we can create a better and brighter future for all of us. And at the end, we will also discuss a free 6-month development program that provides training and funding to AI startups. To ensure the quality of this live event, please make sure that your microphone is muted the entire time until we are open for questions at the end. But you may submit your questions or your comments via the Zoom chat at any time. And now, without further ado, let's please welcome Dr. Richa Chandra, Ms. Richa Bansal, and Ms. Rashmy Parimi today. Thank you all for taking the time to speak with us today. We really appreciate it. Could you all briefly introduce yourself? Rashmy, could I ask you to start first?
Sure. Thanks for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for having us. It's our pleasure to be here, and I'm so glad that, things have changed. Like, when I was at that age, I didn't know what an entrepreneur was. I thought it was like some kind of a unicorn breed. All I knew was conventional paths, conventional jobs, and today there's so many options, and I'm glad I can share some of my experiences to guide others in this path. So my background, I did my undergrad and master's in electrical engineering, but I didn't really do any conventional electrical engineering. I worked in firmware, which is the interface between hardware and software. I thought that was challenging because, hey, a lot of people know to do all hardware and a lot of people know to do all software, but it's a connection that matters. Otherwise, you can't get your hardware to talk to your software. And it looks like a very popular field, but unfortunately not. There's very few people who sustain in this for a long time. They just either move out into one of these other fancy areas. So it's been a good experience. More recently, I've been involved a little on the product management side too, and all of my engineering experience has helped me a lot. So that's a brief tidbit about me.
Dr. Chandra, would you like to go next?
Sure, thank you. And I echo what Rashmy said about that wonderful introduction. I think you're doing something amazing here. It's exciting to hear that there's a focus on Generation Z and the unique characteristics of this generation, which I think you guys are probably one of the best generations that we've had, in my lifetime. I find a lot of your innovation and your brand identity stuff very actually empowering for me as well. So I'm very STEM background for most of my life, I'll say. So I'll start with my undergraduate. It's in chemistry and in Spanish. I went to a small liberal arts college in Texas. And from there, I went for my PhD in chemistry, and I focused on bioanalytical chemistry, in which we developed techniques to assess cardiovascular disease risk factors. From there, I went on to do my postdoctoral appointment, and that's kind of a very traditional academic pathway. And I spent 3 years during my postdoctoral time doing research and published with a Nobel laureate during that time twice. And then I became quickly fatigued from that research environment, that, intensive, constantly, the publish or perish kind of mentality. I came to a point in my life that, I wanted a change, and I started teaching. And so I really enjoyed teaching as a graduate student. And so I did that for a first couple of years, and then landed my current position as a tenured track. Well, now I'm tenured, but at that time, tenured track faculty member at the University of St. Thomas in Houston. So, about 7 years later, I'm tenured. And, you would think that I could just sit back and relax, right? Like tenured associate professor. I have a vibrant research program with undergraduate students. We've published, which is quite remarkable for undergraduate students to do, but I've been very fortunate to have very ambitious students that have a good work ethic. So I didn't rest on my laurels, because the COVID world happened. And one of the passions that I've developed during my teaching career has been to close equity gaps, not only just for women students, but also for underrepresented minorities and anyone who, comes from some disadvantaged background. Kind of focused in on women's issues, because in this last year, we've seen a lot of women leave the workforce, and it concerns me. And we're also finding ourselves with Generation Z in particular. I would say that, Generation Z can't be very inspired by my generation to become moms and have a career and the myth of having it all, because we make it look like it's crazy, right? We haven't done a good job of showing you guys that, it's all doable and possible. So because of that, and sorry for being so long-winded, but just so you have a little bit of an idea of my background, I've become a newborn entrepreneur, if you will. So starting off with the podcast, Wisecast, where we're, interviewing different women and talking about hard topics, difficult discussions, et cetera, kind of a social impact scene. And, that I wasn't satisfied with just the podcast. I want become, more of an activist in this area. And so we are expanding, and, also going to be hosting live events like this to have these difficult conversations with, people being able to participate, not just what we have with the podcast and several other things that are in the works. So that's a long tidbit about me, but that's kind of where the journey, where I came from and where I am right now.
And last but definitely not least, Miss Richa Bansal.
Hey everyone, it's definitely difficult shoes to fill in after Richa Chandra's accomplished bio, but I'll try to do my best. But first of all, thank you, Serena, for having us over. And I feel really glad talking to such a large group of Gen Z and sharing my story and be able to impart any lessons that I can, and impact your entrepreneurial journeys and your STEM journeys in any way possible, right? So a little bit background about myself. I come from India. I did my bachelor's and master's in mechanical engineering. I did my master's in the US, and after I did my master's, I was offered a job with Schlumberger, which is one of the largest oil and gas service companies in the world, as a field engineer. So I worked as a field engineer. I was working in offshore oil rigs in Malaysia. I did that for a couple of years. I was one of the only females on oil rigs at one time. On one of the jobs, I was the only woman in a group of 125 odd crew of men. And then women were just something that they were not used to seeing. In 2013, I came back to Houston, and after that, I did a variety of roles with them in engineering. I was doing some new product development. I moved to supply chain for a little bit, and then I moved into management. And as a engineering manager, I was the only woman engineering manager in a staff of 150 plus at one point in Houston. And so I could constantly see that women are a minority all over the world, back in India, in Malaysia, in US, and despite all the efforts that we are making as society, as organizations, we still have long ways to go for promoting women in leadership, in engineering, technology, business fields. So inspired by that, and also inspired by my journey of how I had managed my career. I also did my MBA while I was working. I had my first kid while I was doing my MBA and working. So just kind of like, inspired by whatever help that I got along in my career and whatever things I did right or not did right, I started Think Careers as a way to share my learnings with other women and other young professionals on how they can advance to the next step in their careers. So right now I'm working full time, but on the side, I'm also building my business. I'm a young entrepreneur as well. And we work with individuals and organizations to help them gain the confidence and skills they need to get to the next level in their career. So with that, yeah, happy to share anything that I can that can help you today.
All right, well, thank you all for those amazing and very inspiring introductions. And now I'm going to get started with the questions for today. So to start off, I just want to go back in time. I want to ask all of you, what influenced each of you to choose your respective STEM fields / careers, and were you guys always interested in entrepreneurship since you were young, or did that develop later on in your lives? I guess, is there anyone in particular that wants to start off? If not, we can go with.
Sure, I can start. I think I was always a very hands-on person growing up, like very hands-on student. I like playing and tinkering with things. I always liked just sports and being outside and being active. And I think that inspired me to go into engineering. I come from a professional services kind of background as well. Business was nowhere to be seen. I had never kind of seen that up close, and I always thought I would be an engineer. So that's kind of what I got into. Also, just coming from India, it's kind of expected that your kids would either be engineers or doctors. So my brother is a doctor, so I chose being engineer. But after I did my master's, I did engineering for some time with Schlumberger. Like I said, I realized that I do, as much as I enjoy engineering, I also like interacting with everybody around me. And just, there are a lot of cross-functional skills that we can gain being in STEM, growing through it, but then also just taking those skills and growing, just in the business side of things in general. So that's kind of what I did. And so entrepreneurship, I think I just stumbled upon it when I realized that whatever I'm doing on the side is just not enough. I can't reach enough people doing that. And so I have to grow it to a point where it's sustainable for me to carry forward as, as something that I can do for the rest of my life if I want to reach more people with my skill sets and with my voice. So that's me.
Dr. Chandra, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so as far as what got me into STEM, I think that was kind of a natural fit for me. I realized that I was talented with math in high school, and I actually was pursuing a math degree in college. Once the math got a little more abstract, past differential equations, et cetera, I was like, maybe just being a pure mathematician isn't right for me. I contemplated a lot of things. I had, a lot of, so I'm trilingual, so I speak Hindi and English, and I picked up Spanish, in my studies, and continued to study Spanish and study abroad. I would say that I was a confused undergraduate student for the most part, because I had so many interests, but chemistry was something that I didn't realize would appeal to me so much until my undergraduate years. And I had a very influential mentor. And when I was trying to decide what I wanted to do next, kind of like what Richa was saying, my family's from India, and there's a lot of expectations of what you need to do with your career. And it was a non-negotiable that, a bachelor's degree was not going to be enough, right? So I knew I had to continue down some path, and my parents were fine with the PhD path. And my advisor as well said, I think you're talented with that. And I did some undergraduate research with my advisor, and he, would show me chemical and engineering news and said, if you do this, you'll always have a job. And I visited him at our 20-year anniversary from graduation, and he said, see, I told you, you have a job, right? So, that's kind of what was a natural fit for me. Did I ever dream of being an entrepreneur? I cannot say I did. I don't think that I had any inclination to pursue having a small business, a startup, nothing like that. I kind of jokingly call it my midlife crisis. You know, that I'm, you know, you just get to a point where, you know, you're things have settled down. I like to say, you know, you've got all the pieces of the puzzle. You might have your family, and I'm like, I'm just going to mess up the puzzle and, you know, go for a new challenge in some ways. And I will say that my STEM background has given me the confidence to know that I can do this, right? At first, it seems like, okay, imposter syndrome all over again. What am I doing? I don't know corporation. I don't know nonprofit. I don't know the terms even, right? But I do feel confident that if I could do a PhD and all the research and things I've done, I can probably figure this out. And it's just been kind of an exciting new journey.
And Rashmi, would you like to also share what inspired you to go into STEM and entrepreneurship?
Sure. So already both of them have echoed a lot of, you know, what comes with being an Indian. These are the only two choices you have. And to me, biology put me to sleep. So I was like, hey, math it is. And, you know, it's not so bad. You know, there's so many choices there. And at some point of time, I think physics and chemistry were not quite my cup of tea, but it turned out there's all these pivots that I didn't know. It's like you didn't know need to be very mainstream. There were all these side tracks that you could explore, and out of all those, you know, pivots, I found that, you know, electrical engineering, though it sounds so formidable on the outside, it's not all that. There's so many fun things in it. The, you know, world of microcontrollers, all of these communication protocols and things like that. So I would say that, you know, having that basic background from STEM, it gave me a lot of confidence in spite of, you know, each time when I tried to pivot into a new career, there were, I was always faced with the same challenges, imposter syndrome, and, you know, things like, hey, there's other people who've done PhDs on this, and what am I going to do? But then I realized, hey, I have, because of my unique journey, I have this specific skill that I bring, and that's what adds value, and that's why I am part of that, you know, niche team. So I think I would give a lot of credit to my STEM background.
Yeah, I would like to echo what Rashmi said, right? I think of my engineering degree also as a foundational degree, right? Because engineering taught me how to be analytical. And so it's just this foundational degree from where you can like pivot in so many directions. And doing mechanical engineering doesn't just mean that I have to go into thermodynamics or like this hardcore mechanical subjects. I did my master's in design for cost, design for X type work, you know, so how do you do product design that's more cost efficient, more sustainable or whatnot. And from there on, I could pivot into, you know, business and whatnot. So just to hone that point further, what Rashmi said, that STEM degree can really be this foundational degree and it helps you be analytical in your mind. And then you can like go into so many directions from there.
Well, I'm not Indian, but I definitely can relate to, you know, our parents wanting me to do STEM or something like that specifically in college. And I think many other students here today can also relate to those familiar pressures as well. And since you all mentioned that, you know, you have Indian roots or lived in India when you were young, I know Ms. Bansal, you mentioned that you grew up in India. I was wondering what brought you to the United States specifically?
So I was quite interested in doing a master's. At the time, it was also, when I did my master's, it was 2008, 2009. So, you know, there was this huge economic crash down at the time. Jobs were scarce in India. And I thought, you know, just bachelor's is not enough. I wanted to do another degree. And I think two things, just the reputation of the schools in the US, you know, that was definitely one factor. But then also I just wanted to enjoy this foreign life. Like I wanted to see what it was like to come to the States and live on my own, even though I was kind of living on my own away from my hometown in India. But, you know, I just wanted to kind of experience. So both things, just the reputation of school, but also just the experience of being on my own and living in a foreign country is what got me to US.
Okay, and the next question I wanted to ask all of you is, what are some of your greatest career challenges and how did you all deal with them? Rashmi, would you like to start with this one?
Sure. So I think during the early stages of my career, one big challenge I had was lack of mentors and role models. Like Richa mentioned, you sometimes end up being the only woman in this huge ocean of people, and it's not that they're treating you bad, but you can't relate to them. Your journey is so different, your situation is so different, your priorities are different, and a lot of times it's like and then I think, I don't know if it's genetic or is it something about our upbringing. We try to follow the crowd. A lot of times we don't get that inspiration to do something very radical, unless it has to be driven by a lot of thought. It's not something natural to us. So during my early career, there were a lot of times when I thought, hey, maybe I'm not in the right place. All these people just seem to know a lot. And also, it's about the kind of am I with the right crowd? Am I even getting the right advice? Am I setting up myself for success? That was something I struggle a lot with, but hey, we have the wonderful world of internet with all the resources at our disposal. So I think reading out different things and exploring all of these other pivots helped me a lot to figure out that it's just some decisions you don't know in the beginning that how they will end up, but you just have to take that leap of faith and go ahead. And what else? Oh, I didn't quite realize the value of speaking up for yourself. I was like, hey, I thought my work is going to speak for itself, but it's not 100% true. There are times when you have to be your own advocate because no one's a mind reader. Till you explicitly say you want it, the other person is not going to do that. You want to do something different. So that was something that I've learned over time, that you need to say what you're good at. You need to promote yourself. You need to show people that you're capable of something, and you need to have the network to get people to take that risk on you so that you go to your next step.
And Dr. Chandra, do you have anything that you want to add?
Yeah, so I mean, I think what Rashmi is saying with those pivots, right? And there's so many of them throughout, because your career journey is never linear, right? And just now once you leave, I think the undergraduate world, it becomes like you're just in an ocean of so many different ways that you can go. And I think that those moments were very challenging for me when I didn't have that security of what comes next. So for example, when I left my postdoc, the part that I didn't share is I left my postdoc and I had no job lined up at all. I had just gotten married and followed my heart to my husband's, town. He had a good job, so it made sense at that time. So I tutored on the side. I found an adjunct teaching position, and then I found a visiting professorship position. But I felt like I don't have anything that's not year to year, right? Like I had or month to month contracts that I was just kind of bouncing around. So there was this, moment in my life, and then I was expecting my first child, where I felt like I didn't have everything just kind of figured out and lined up. And that was definitely a scary time. And I will say in academia, those tenure track positions have always been difficult to find, even more so, I think, in current times. And, if you pursue a STEM academic route, I highly recommend, if you get that kind of opportunity, you build everything around it, because they are so few. And I do think that having that credential behind me is what's helping me be an entrepreneur now as well, because and I don't know if Richa and Rashmi feel the same way, but I think it would have been difficult to become an entrepreneur without having that pedigree, if you will. And not to say that some people can't do it. I think there are a lot of brilliant people out there, you know, but not all of us are Steve Jobs, or, you know, we're not all going to start off like that. So I think that it's important to keep building your STEM pedigree, if that's, you know, your background. It's a very, I guess, conservative approach. It's a very maybe Asian mindset to, you know, have that backup career, you know, like have that kind of as your solid foundation. And, you know, that's my personal take on it. It's not a one size fits all, but I think that like the entrepreneur part can bud off of that, and you have all of that knowledge and expertise to take into it.
Yeah, I think I echo a little bit what Dr. Richa Chandra is saying about taking a little bit more conservative approach to entrepreneurship myself, and that is definitely different from how some other people would do. And then just kind of like sharing my thoughts on what I struggle with most in my career is something that came up a couple of times already, like things around imposter syndrome. I mean, growing up, I had done fairly well in school throughout my school life. I mean, I graduated pretty well in my undergrad and in master's as well. I did fairly well at work. I switched 5 roles in the 10 years that I was with Schlumberger. Graduated again top of class doing my MBA while having a kid, while working full time, and still struggled with imposter syndrome every single job that I've done or come into. And I think it just happens with everybody. Just, you know, so when I started understanding that it's not something that's unique to me, that is just happening to me, it happens with everybody. And the more accomplished you are, the better, the more A-grade student you are, it's likely to happen with you more. Then you can start to, once that self-awareness sets in, then you can start to deal with it better. Then I could, you know, reach out to my mentors. Very few mentors that I had, as Rashmy said, I only had like a couple mentors, but I could then reach out to them and say, you think, am I ready? And they would say, you are more ready than you think. So just having that self-awareness then really helped me throughout. And even with this entrepreneurial journey, right? I mean, I sat with that idea for a good year and a half, 2 years, and then my friends kept pushing me that, why are you not playing bigger? Why are you not playing bigger? You're not letting it go. So that means that you care about it. You know, start playing big. Go out there, take that little risk. There's nothing to lose really. And, you know, it's just been very welcoming community, whoever that I've been working with. So just understanding that if you are dealing with any of those feelings, that those feelings are real, valid, happens with everybody. And they're just, you know, seeking mentoring and support to overcome it, essentially.
So I think all of you mentioned or touched on the mentorship and the networking aspect. I was wondering, what advice would you give, especially to like current high school or college students that are looking for these mentors? How would you recommend they, you know, connect probably with like people like you that have experience and can provide advice and coaching? How would you recommend students go about doing that?
So, I mean, I'm a huge believer in like cold emailing people, right? I mean, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? They don't respond, right? And you don't take it personally. You know, and LinkedIn, I think that Generation Z is not as focused on this very important social network. I think that Gen Z is, you know, all over the Instagram, and you know, it seems like these people are huge, the influencers, and to be honest, influencers probably don't make that much money unless they're very, very big celebrities, right? So I think that you know, the aspect of LinkedIn is that if you're looking for a mentor, you're looking for somebody that's a millennial or Gen X person. That's where you're going to find them if they're not in your immediate community or your immediate academic community. So I think that that's super important for Gen Z. If you don't have one today, go set up your LinkedIn and start connecting with people. These kinds of events are super powerful. I tell my students this all the time: turn your video on, show your face, start establishing your social presence everywhere you go. This hour that you're spending on here, people should be able to remember who you are. And if you're just like a word or a black screen, I don't remember those students, right? I don't have an interaction. I don't have their face to put with it, so that if they email me like, I want to do research with you, I want to work with you, I'm less inclined to respond or to really, offer them a position. Because when we mentor, students and then it's our time that we're giving up, right? So if I don't feel like I it's not worthwhile, of an exchange, then I'm very unlikely to. So I think that as digital as we've become, it's a little bit more challenging, yet there are some new avenues that have opened up in that you can go outside of your immediate community and find virtual mentorships and stuff. But if you're looking for more hands-on experiences in your local university academic communities, cold email, knock on doors, show up at every single event that you can. Networking is probably the most important thing, and it can be exhausting, and I recognize that. I remember being in that position and going to all these little professional groups to see like who might connect me to the right person to get the job, and in the end, who matters a lot. It's not to be discounted. It's you might think like, oh, look at my amazing CV or my amazing resume, and that's just going to open doors, but unfortunately the world is just not built in that kind of ideological way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great advice, that you should connect with people on LinkedIn and just cold email them and cold call them and ask for their time. You would be surprised how many people would be willing to help if you are genuine. You really share why are you reaching out, and you are serious about putting the time, because mentoring is a two-way street. And the second thing I would also say is try to attend events to just up your knowledge about different things. So just for example, if I suppose you were all interested in entrepreneurship, at least to some degree, and because that's why you were here. So just a couple of days ago, yesterday and day before, Houston, there was a huge event on entrepreneurship called Venture Houston. And such events are very easy to find. I mean, you can search in your city. Right now we are all virtual anyway, so you can search for upcoming entrepreneur events or VC events in the city or in the country. And that was all virtual, all free, and great opportunity to connect with other entrepreneurs who are new, great opportunities to learn what people are doing in terms of getting ideas and starting like what their chapter 1 looks like, right? So just, try to attend as many of these events as possible, and be active in those attendance. That's kind of how you would build presence and how you would build your knowledge base.
What I'd like to add to that is, yeah, people, if they see the intent, they're very generous with their time, but it goes both ways. And, like as human beings, we always seek connection. That's built into our, personality. And even the most introverted people, they would like meaningful connections. So I think when you cold email, kind of be very specific. Or, if you say, hey, I saw you at XYZ and I want to talk to you about this, that few lines help rather than saying, hey, I want you to mentor me, because mentorship is a very broad term, and it can mean a lot of things. You can seek mentorship from someone who's been there, done that. Even peer mentoring is a big thing, because two people have walked in the same shoes. So a lot of times being very specific helps a lot. And that's, if you are very shy and you don't think that, and I understand Zoom exhaustion, all this networking, it's a real thing. Sometimes, just taking that little time with tiny efforts, those go a long way. And, when things go back to a world where we can have more of those in-person interactions at events, just asking someone, for lunch, like you meet someone in an event and say, hey, I thought this talk was interesting. Do you want to discuss it more at lunch? That's the form of a relation. You never know. So things like that, like before the pandemic, few of my mentors, that's how I met them. I went to these, networking events, which were like tech talks and things like that. And we just started discussing what was in the talk. And we found out that, hey, we were kind of looking at similar questions. We had so much in our background common. You never know. So it's all about getting out there, talking to people.
Thank you all for that very, very helpful advice. I think it's very, very applicable to a lot of Gen Z students in particular, since we are oftentimes more focused on things like Instagram and we don't really think about making these professional or very meaningful connections that can help us in our careers. So thank you all for that great advice. And my next question I wanted to direct to Dr. Chandra in particular. I know that you have published research with the Nobel laureate, Dr. Brian Kovalchuk, twice. And I was wondering, could you briefly describe your experience and any insights you received about the research process?
That's a big one. So the research process it requires a lot of patience. Okay, so I'll start with that. It requires a lot of patience. It requires humility. I will say, from when I was a PhD student, going up to people and saying, I don't know how to do this protocol. I've been reading all these papers. I keep messing up, talking to your peers, your colleagues, other postdocs in the group. And, recognizing that there's no shame in that, just you have to kind of be patient with the process. So I think that that's taught me a lot, and it's helping me with entrepreneurship as well, because I'm okay with a lot of failure, right? Like, it's just something that is part of my training, is that, things aren't going to work out, and it's okay. I'll have to experiment again and repeat things. And as far as publishing as a postdoc with a Nobel laureate, I think that I definitely, my mentor at that time, my PI, principal investigator, saw, that I had a unique talent for research, in that I can stick with a problem. Like, I have a lot of tenacity about, I won't let go easily of something. So I think that that's an important skill to have in scientific research, that, I don't give up easily. And I don't, I tell my students that all the time, right? Like, is it hurting? Like, are you struggling with it? That's good, right? Like, that's a good thing, because that's how you're going to grow. So I think having tenacity, having that patience is what made me stand out in my research team, where she put me on the project with Brian Kovalchuk's team. And, he was very already, before the Nobel Prize, accomplished, right, in his own right. He discovered the structure of for anyone who knows, the GPCR membrane protein. So I think that I was given that opportunity because I exhibited those traits. And I think that can apply in many fields, not just in research, so, being patient, sticking with problems, and showing that, right, to whoever's mentoring you, whoever you report to, your team, right, will make you stand out as someone who's going to get picked for bigger opportunities.
And now I want to talk a bit about each of your guys' entrepreneurship/startup experiences, because I know there are many students here that are very interested in starting their own initiatives. Could you each briefly introduce, which specific startup you founded or worked with, and, why you started it?
Okay, since I haven't founded my own startup, I've been part of startups. I'll go first. So I've been part of two, luckily, very successful medical device startups. One of them was called Verb Surgical. The other one is Auris Health. Both of them looked at, devices in the medical robotic space. So today, I don't know how many people are aware of this. Intuitive Surgical, their surgical robot is they've had the monopoly over the market for quite a long time. Credits to them, but it's been quite an under-researched field, and there are new players who are trying to bring in, like, the actual word we use is democratizing robotic surgery, make it more affordable for people, because this is something which gives you better outcomes. You reduce the load on a physical human being. You improve the skills by automating a lot of things. You add, AI, computer vision, and all of these cutting edge technologies to help human beings. So, you should have more such products out there, not just one. I mean, sure, they are doing very good. It's nothing bad about them, but you need more perspectives to it, more products. So the first startup I was part of it, I was employee number 150, pretty young. They just had like the first prototype, and people were still brainstorming about what makes sense, what are the parts that need to go in, what needs to be built up, how all of them need to interact. And that was my first startup experience. It was very scary, but I learned so much within a short period of time because nothing was given to me. I just had to apply all of the things from my foundations and from my past experience, connect the dots, and start off with something dirty. It's like we knew we had a very big goal, but we started working off with what facts we knew. Like start small, just get something working today, then build on it, keep building. So the famous saying, Rome was not built in a day, that was quite inspirational because if you want to go somewhere big, you need to start small and you have to keep going. And a lot of what Dr. Chandra said, be persistent. You will run into failures. It's part of the whole journey, but learn from it. Don't let it take you back, but rework it. See what you did wrong. See if there's another way to do it. So, and I had a group of really wonderful colleagues who were from different backgrounds.
I am.
So they were kind of able to fill in the things that I was not good at, and collectively we were able to show some really good things. And that startup got acquired by Johnson & Johnson. So moving on to my current place, which is also acquired by Johnson & Johnson, we have a product out in the field. It's a surgical robot which diagnoses and does biopsies for lung cancer. It's one of the most deadliest cancer, and there's at an early stage, there's very few methods available to diagnose it and help people have a better chance to live. So it's a very impactful field, and I think the same principles follow. It's like, we wanted to get something out there which will start making impact. Our first version is not our best version, but it works. It is safe. It is something that people want to use. People see an impact. And early this year, we put out our second generation, which adds on to it, reaches out to more people, and it has been quite an impactful and inspirational time so far.
I can go next. So as I mentioned, my startup was called Pink Careers, and we work with early career women and early professionals to help them get to the next level in their careers. And we help them gain these skills and confidence through our leadership programs and career trainings, which are all designed to be virtual, instructor-led, and high touch point. So all our programs are long duration programs because we strongly believe that one and done events are just not sufficient to impart any sort of lasting behavior change. You have to really kind of stick with the training, you have to really stick with the coaching to really have any sort of meaningful impact in your behavior, and sort of really a meaningful impact on the confidence levels that you have. And really, like the reason why I started Pink Careers was all inspired by my own journey. As I mentioned, I was in oil and gas for a decade almost, with very little mentoring, with not sufficient training and skill set that I think we should get, not just as women, but as early career professionals. If we were to get more training as early, our first time managers, we would do so much better in terms of our confidence, in terms of how we grow in our careers. So what my advice for you is, as you start thinking about your own entrepreneurial journeys, think about where your passion lies, think about where you're good at and what can make money. And your entrepreneur, like a successful business would lie at the intersection of these three things. What you're really, really passionate about, what you think you're good at. Like for me, I was really passionate about promoting women in leadership, about helping other professionals kind of grow in their careers. I think I'm good at teaching. From whatever teaching I've done, it's different teaching than what Dr. Chandra does, but I love being on video, being able to share my experiences, being able to share whatever can help other people. So I love teaching, and then I work with businesses primarily because that's where the money is. So you have to kind of keep these three things in mind as you start to look at your own entrepreneurial journeys.
Yeah, so I think I need some of Richa's advice there on entrepreneurship for myself. So, I have, like I said, I'm a newborn entrepreneur. The organization that I've started up, co-started up, co-founded with my partner is the Wisest Women. We started off with our podcast. We are a social impact organization. I am a huge believer in my career, journey is, that I want to build this around my family. I want to build, and I do this from, definitely authentic passion, like Richa was saying, is important because, your customers or your followers are going to know if it's not authentic. So definitely, choose, your idea based on something that's, something that you authentically care about. Now, as far as, what I think that my patience and my tenacity with it is definitely coming into play. We are, we were in a listen before you speak kind of phase with the startup of our podcast, kind of collecting information, trying to do more of a market research, if you will. And we're still kind of in that phase. We need to identify what needs are out there. I know from my microcosm world of, I'm also a health professions advisor, and I advise students into graduate programs and in their careers. And I've kept in touch with them over the last decade of teaching that, we do a lot of coaching, a lot of mentoring at a small university, right? The students get that very, personalized attention. And then we just throw them out there in the ocean. And, like what Richa was saying, you get to these points in your career and you no longer have that professor or that mentor as easily accessible to you. And we, specifically women, will land into situations that, it would have been nice to kind of know like what to expect, but you sometimes don't even know what to ask until you're in that moment. And, based on that, our organization is trying to continue that coaching and mentorship and creating that kind of network and actually giving, students kind of a more long-term toolkit to approach those unique challenges that women have in STEM careers. As Richa mentioned already, she was in a team of 150 engineers, the only woman. Who would she go to talk about like, where's the lactation room or, or the imposter syndrome that's, specific to women because of benevolent sexism even, right? Like, let's say you're not even planning on having children, but somebody's like, oh, I don't think you should go for that position because, it's hard to have a family. And even if it comes from a kind place, right? So, and then part of that is, getting men involved, right? We need to get men to advocate. So that's part of the activism that we're doing with our organization, is to also pull men into this dialogue, Generation Z included, because they are going to have wives, sisters, colleagues that are women that are going through things. So I think a big part of what we're doing is that bringing social awareness and discussions and attention to these difficult issues. But I haven't figured out the money-making part. So that was the part that I was like, I'm going to need advice because, right now we're, very newborn. And so, that part hasn't been as much of a focus for us.
I'm always happy to talk to Dr. Chandra.
Thank you.
And I would like to add one more thing here, both Dr. Chandra and Richa mentioned about how they've gotten these, not really ill-tending advice, but things about how they get this impression that, hey, this position is not for you, or, given you're a woman, you should not be doing that. We need allies. A lot of this is unintentional. So, part of the whole equation about getting equity is, sure, we want us to have an equal opportunity to do, everything that men today think they don't doubt themselves twice to do, but also we need to show them our side of the perspective, give them a picture of what is it to walk in our shoes. That's going to be a very big, I'd say, encouragement in anyone's life, not just entrepreneurship, but even in general, because, hey, they live with us, they are part of the society, and maybe, there are few bad actors. I won't really, get into that, but for the majority of them, they just don't know how to support us, what to do. So I think part of it is also like, like I kept mentioning before, you have to speak up, you have to ask for it and say, hey, this is what you could be doing different, or this is what I think I might need some more, a different perspective about. That helps.
Yeah, you're right. Like 99% of it is probably unconscious bias. There are very few bad actors out there who intentionally go out and say, today I'm going to ruin somebody's day just because she's a woman. That doesn't really happen. It's just all unconscious for the most part.
Well, thank you all for that amazing advice and for sharing your journeys with us. Before we get into the Q&A session, I know, Rashmy, you are part of a nonprofit that is providing a free development program and a grant for AI startups. And I was wondering if you could briefly share some information about that.
Sure, Serena. Let me have a slide deck that I can share here. So the nonprofit that Serena was mentioning, that is Women in AI. They are global organization headquartered in France. And for this year, for the first, like last year, they had an accelerator aimed at, not just women, but any founders who are addressing one of these sustainable development goals when various stages of their founding journey. They may be already like they have their seed money, but they want other kind of advice, or people who are still thinking about, hey, is this even going to go forward? Do I think I can make it that far? So people in all stages, and it's not really even like targeted only women, it's open for all. So this year, the US chapter of Women in AI started our own cohort of Accelerate, which is the program, the 6-month development program, which is very structured towards addressing any of these goals, and also structured in giving founders the tools that they need to succeed and go forward in their entrepreneurial journey. So right now, we are taking in applications until February 15th, and we hope to have all of the onboarding done by end of February, and the program will start in March. And it's in 2 phases. The first phase will be towards forming the basic part of your product, which is like your discovery, your ideation, figuring out what is your MVP. And in the middle of this journey, there's a hackathon, which, just like any other curriculum, it's your midterm exam where you get to pitch whatever you have built up until then, and then figure out how you take it forward. And if I go further, so this is our wonderful team of volunteers. All of them have been so generous with their time, extremely talented people, really hardworking. And yes, Arena was part of the open house, which we put together last week. I think, yeah, Dr. Chandra also attended that. So that was quite a great event, and we got a lot more applications after that. So I'm hoping few of you today are inspired to submit your application, no matter which stage you are in. If you think this is the support you're looking for, please go ahead. The applications are still open. There's still a week. And, it's like, we would love to have you in our cohort. So a few things about maybe, we have tied up with some few wonderful partners who have been very generous with technology support, with their monetary support, and a lot of experts in terms of, mentors and coaches. So I would really strongly encourage all of you to take a look at this. Actually, Sarina, after this, I'll send this slide. I think you have the slide deck over. Please feel free to share it.
And I just wanted to, I know that, this seems like mostly for women, but this also, guys can also take advantage of this program, right?
Yes, absolutely. We are very inclusive of everyone. We don't really, it says women for AI, but it's women trying to bring in equity in the AI world. So that's how we'd like to put it.
So for any of you boys out there, if you're interested, you can also apply. Just make sure that, you are working with girls and you are working towards a product that will help achieve their goals.
Actually, I will go to the page for the contact information if anyone wants to get a screenshot and look at it further.
All right, well, thank you so much for sharing that. And now I think we can move on to the Q&A session. So if you guys would like, you can put your questions in the chat. If you want to speak out loud, please raise your hand and I will call on you. So I think the first question is from Shireen. I think this is to you, Rashmi, about the program. She wanted to ask whether it's only for US citizens or if people, I guess, from other nations can apply as well.
Right now, we
I don't think we have a citizenship requirement. We are accepting applications from people who reside in US, Canada, and Mexico. But since this is something that we want to accommodate people who also have a full-time job and are wanting to start their entrepreneurial journey, we are trying to focus everything around outside of working hours, that everyone can still participate while you work a full-time job. So feel free to apply, please.
I got a message privately about a question specifically about how you guys would deal with discrimination or sexism, against you guys because you are girls working in an industry mainly dominated by men. So how have you guys dealt with that in the past, if you have experienced that sort of sexism towards yourselves?
I can touch upon this a little bit. My name, like the name of my business is Pink Careers. It's, very quickly you kind of get towards, oh, it's only for women. And we, in the beginning I try to explain, it's not about only for women. It's about women bringing equity in the workplace. And for me, Pink is all about, owning it. Pink means that, you own it. If it's stereotyped, you step into the conversation and you talk about it and you own it. And that's kind of how you disparaged all the stereotype around it. And I got trolled in the beginning as well. I got some messages that were not the best. And at some point you realize that you're doing this for yourself and you're doing this to bring good in the world, and you gotta tune out the noise, right? So if people don't understand and they don't want to be part of your whatever you're doing, that's fine. You gotta just kind of tune them out and say what you're doing is still bringing benefit to a lot of other people, because I get so many messages around what I'm doing have been helpful to other people in their career journey. It's been so inspiring. So I focus my energies on that, on the positive. Tune out the noise. That's my advice to you.
So,
sorry.
Go.
You're not out there to please
everyone. Stop having that mentality at all. You have your support system. There are few people who really genuinely appreciate what you're doing and recognize what you do. So let that be your guiding voice. Like Richa mentioned, filter out all of the other stuff.
Yeah, the way I speak, the way I pass my message is not for everybody, and I don't want it for everybody as well. So if you don't relate with it, it's fine by me. You just gotta tune that out. So I think you gotta learn that. You only learn that slowly, right? As you go through some of these experiences, you learn that, and the quicker you do, the more confident you will be in your messaging and what you're putting out there, right? Because it'll be more focused.
I want to add that, and it feels very awkward and uncomfortable, and I still experience this sometimes with students who, will call me Miss, or, call a male colleague doctor. And I think that my advice to girls, women, is to always advocate for yourself and emphatically correct those kinds of stereotypes. And, even if, most of the time, we've talked about it, it's unconscious biases, it's benevolent sexism. But the way we, move that needle is that we have to keep, advocating for ourselves. I've had to advocate for students who have, experienced sexism from a male colleague. And, I think that we should all kind of lift each other up. So if there's someone younger than you, you can be a resource to them. You know, we women can help each other through that. So I think the building this network is really important. Find, you know, somebody who is a safe person to go to if you experience these things, who can, you know, help you find the appropriate channels, how to, you know, report things to HR, et cetera. Don't just take it. You know, I don't think that that's how change will come about if we just stay quiet. And I won't lie, I've been guilty of that when I was younger, where I just kind of laughed it off or just ignored it. And, you know, as I've matured and stuff, I can definitely appreciate that that doesn't do me any good, and it doesn't do other women any good if I just stay quiet about these things. So there are appropriate ways to advocate for yourself and defend yourself against these things.
And I think Benjamin submitted a question in the chat. He asked, has anybody ever discouraged you before? And if so, how did you react if that happened?
I can go for this. So, you know, I've like both Dr. Chandra and Richa mentioned, you know, we've surrounded by all these men who don't doubt themselves at all for anything. It's like, and a lot of times they just get things offered to them, while we have to, like, you know, we keep thinking, hey, we don't meet all these things on the checklist. And out of, you know, like little of my self-awareness and other things, I was like, hey, this is some, you know, I tried to volunteer for a new work assignment, and someone just shot me down saying, hey, you don't know, that is not your background, you can't do it. And initially, of course, it stings. No one likes to get a no, especially, you know, when they opened it up for volunteers, and, you know, it's not even about like they were seeking for it. But then I decided, okay, you know what, let me work on this in the background. I'm going to show it to them. You know, why just say it? I did it without advertising. I accomplished it in the background and said, hey, here's your finished tasks. What do you say about it? And they didn't have any words. So that's how you deal with discouragement.
I would also like to add that sometimes, you know, you may get discouragement just from your family itself, right? Especially if you are more like traditional, like if their expectation is that you go in more traditional kind of job, corporate world, and not look at entrepreneurship and all that. And you know, like just like I believe that you should have mentors for different kind of career challenges, the same way our families are obviously great resource for us to go in certain type of challenges. Obviously, like there are closest allies, but perhaps they don't need to be your closest allies as you're thinking about what you want to do with your career and thinking about entrepreneurship. Find those other set of allies and mentors and that like community, right? That may not necessarily be your family, and that's okay. So again, you know, have different mentors, have different set of people that you can really rely on for advice and for that shoulder when things get really hard. And if that's not your family, that's okay too.
Yeah, I want to echo exactly that, you know, about the family component of it, because I think sometimes the discouragement can come from home, and it's not necessarily meant to be that, but, you know, sometimes your family sees you only like maybe portraying like the negative aspects, et cetera, and they don't quite, and if they're your parents, et cetera, they don't have, you know, that understanding of maybe what new thing that you are exploring, right? They could be in a completely different field. So take, you know, it's a little bit of toughening up. And I understand that takes time, you know, as you get older, as you get more independent, I think that does come. But kind of, you know, hardening yourself to the criticism. And, you know, it can even come from your spouse, you know, but, you know, in times like that, I think that it might be coming from a good place. So ask, why do you think that, right? Why is it that you're discouraging me from doing this? Is there a real reason behind it? And then you can explore that, right? Because maybe there's something more tangible than just somebody always being anti you, right? Like, and it could be a valid concern. And, you know, that could open up a discussion that leads you to more clarity in your process on the personal front. On the professional front, if you find yourself getting discouraged or, encountering failure, I'm a big believer in having a protocol for everything. And so I think having a sort of coping protocol, and I have this for all things, right? First, you just kind of deal with the shock of that discouragement, that failure, et cetera. And then I quickly, and everybody's got a different timeline, but within that same day, I come up with actionable items to address that. Like, what can I do to improve it? I take it as a challenge. But that's taken time for me to develop my kind of grieving protocol for failure or for, discouragement.
Well, I know that we're a little over 3 o'clock now, and I know that you're all very busy. So if any of you have to leave, that is fine. And thank you to all the attendees as well. If you guys have to leave, thank you for attending today. If not, Rashmy, I think there's 2 specific questions about the program that you mentioned. Do you have time to address them, or?
Yeah, I can stay back for some time.
Okay, yeah. And then other than that, I'm sorry, I don't think we can answer all the other questions today, but yeah, I think Dr. Chandra put her email in the chat. Richa, Ms. Bansal, and Ms. Parimi, if you guys would like to put your contact information as well in the chat, or your LinkedIn profiles, the rest of you that have questions, feel free to reach out to them. So Rashmy, I think it was Sona Lily asked for high school students, if they want to join the program, do the students themselves have to come up with the project ideas, or will they have help with that idea?
So at least you need to have the beginning, like, which one of those sustainable goals you identify with and what do you think. No one expects you to have a fully formed idea, but at least if you know where you want to start, yes, there are mentors who can help you fine tune that idea, make it, presentable and something which can be developed into a product. So please don't let that part discourage you from not applying this year.
And then her other question was, for the curriculum of the program, will the curriculum be taught during business hours or after hours? I think what she meant is like, because students have to go to school during business hours, when will this curriculum be taught?
I think there's some amount of flexibility with it, and it can be, tailored according to your, I know that the interaction with your mentors and the specific subject matter experts, those can be customized. I believe that there's also some recorded part of the curriculum that if someone did miss a session or 2 here and there, they can go back and refer to. So there's a lot of flexibility built into it, because we all recognize that we are in challenging times and not everyone is able to do everything at the same time. So yes, please let that not time zone or commitments, these are not hurdles at all.
And Kevin, I think you have your hand up. Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah. So I noticed in your PowerPoint that the tournament starts in March, and right now it's already February. What day is it? February 6th. So like, when is the admission deadline for the tournament?
Feb 15th is when we stop taking applications, and after that we'll reach out to individual applicants and have the next round of interviews, and by the end, the end of February, we will have them onboarded and connected with at least the initial mentors. That's the plan.
So which means that we should already have like a plan, like a vague plan of what we're trying to do before February 15th.
At least some basic questions about, so there's all those sustainable goals that is in the PowerPoint. Sarina will send it afterwards, or I will. Yeah, if you look at our LinkedIn page, you can find them. You should at least have the idea of which goal do you want to associate yourself with, or what even from a very high level, what is a problem that you're looking to solve. It need not be quite refined and stuff, but at least that beginning intuition, that's essential, because those are like the mandatory questions in the application.
All
But
right.
no one is going to ask you, hey, how much time did you spend on it? Or do you have a business proposal ready? Or do you even have like your prototype ready? That is not the expectation, but
Okay.
these initial things, yes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all again for coming today, and we really appreciate it. I hope you all learned as much as I did and was inspired by all of our amazing speakers. And so yeah, so have a good day, everyone. If you want to join StudentPort, the barcode is here, or you can just visit the website studentport.space. And have a great day, everyone. Stay safe.
All right.
Bye.
See you guys.